O Conselho de Investigação de Produtos Químicos, Saúde e Riscos dos Estados Unidos realizou uma reunião em um dia no edifício Ronald Reagan, em Washington, D.C., no dia 2 de junho de 2005, sobre a questão crítica do risco de poeira combustível em instalações industriais. A reunião foi convocada pela CSB como parte de um estudo abrangente sobre as causas de explosões de poeiras seguintes às tragédias em Kingston, Carolina do Norte, na West Pharmaceutical Services, Corbin, Kentucky, na CTA Acoustics e na Hayes Lemers, em Huntington, Indiana. Todas elas no ano de 2003. Um total de 14 pessoas morreram e 81 ficaram feridas nestes 3 acidentes. A CSB está trabalhando para evitar que tragédias similares ocorram no futuro. Os membros do conselho, John Blesland e Gary Vischer, se uniram à presidente da CSB, Carolyn Merritt.
Today the hearing will focus on combustible dust, which the board has come to recognize as a serious industrial safety problem. Dust explosions often cause serious loss of life and terrible economic consequences. While some programs to mitigate dust hazards exist at the state and local level, we recognize there is no comprehensive federal program that addresses this problem.
Angela Blair, investigadora-chefe da CSB, e o investigador Gib Joseph apresentaram dados preliminares indicando que houve 197 incidentes de explosão de poeira nos Estados Unidos desde 1980, ocasionando 109 óbitos e 592 lesões. A explosão que ocorre quando finas partículas de poeira são incendiadas ocorre em muitas indústrias, segundo a CSB, inclusive em produtos de borracha e de plástico, fabricação de produtos químicos, metais primários, produtos de madeira e de madeira serrada e produtos alimentícios, entre outros.
Many fatalities and injuries have resulted from combustible dust incidents. Also, various industrial materials pose a combustible dust hazard.
A investigadora Blair explicou que, diferentemente de explosões típicas com gases ou com vapor que requerem apenas combustível, oxigênio e ignição, as explosões de poeira exigem que finas partículas sejam dispersas no ar e que essas partículas precisam estar confinadas em um prédio ou em outra estrutura.
First, dust settles out on flat surfaces in the plant. These are usually overhead surface, and unfortunately the dust that settles the highest is also the most fine, the smallest particles. Some event, whether it's an explosion of a different sort or turbulent ignition or some other event, disturbs settled dust into a cloud, and that cloud is ignited and explodes. And then the initial explosion, the turbulence in the flame front and the pressure wave generated from the initial explosion loft additional dust, which then explodes. And the explosion continues to propagate throughout the building wherever it can encounter combustible dust that can be lofted into an explosive mixture, and the flame front is still alive to ignite it. So then we have a chain effect of one explosion after another after another.
I think when I look at the statistics, the number of accidents that have happened, it's obvious that a manufacturing facility doesn't want to have an explosion. And these explosions seem to be easily preventable. They're not complicated chemical processes which get out of control. They're really explosions because the dust has accumulated and then there's something that sets it off.
The video footage that I'm about to show you.
A senhora Blair mostrou à plateia em vídeo feito pelo Corpo de Bombeiros de Lenoir County, Carolina do Norte, enquanto combatia a explosão de poeira que resultou no incêndio da indústria farmacêutica em 2003. O que estão vendo é o mais próximo que muitos de nós podemos chegar de uma experiência em primeira mão de se estar lá, na linha de frente, e combater um incêndio industrial como este. Na parte mais próxima, dá para ver uma parte do prédio que foi lançada a centenas de metros. Elas não puderam aparecer em pessoa, mas as vítimas da explosão de pó contaram suas histórias e relatos para a televisão e apresentados para a plateia da reunião da CSB. Os trabalhadores desses acidentes sofreram queimaduras extensas.
Just before I begin, let me say how how moved I was by that last presentation and how much I congratulate the board for doing it. We lost 37 members of our union last year. One or another of our staff investigated most of those fatalities on the ground and a lot of other serious injuries. And there's often such a disconnect between going out and meeting with victims and trying to help victims and sort of understand what happened, and then coming to this town and dealing with regulatory agencies that sometimes forget what it's all about. I want to congratulate you for putting that up front. That's very important.
And I think it's important to understand that each of these has a human impact, and that's indeed what we're trying to prevent, is the human impact. The detail and the engineering and the science is interesting, but the outcome is how do we prevent these very tragic and very human impacting, both physically and economically, how do we prevent these events?
O próximo painel apresentou o testemunho sobre as condições e a eficiência das regras contra incêndios no sentido de prevenir incêndios e explosões de poeira. Ele inclui George Miller, da Associação Nacional de Investigadores de Incêndios, Guy Coluna, da Associação Nacional de Proteção contra Incêndios, ANFPA, e Dave Carniver, do Conselho Internacional de Códigos. Representantes de Kentucky e da Carolina do Norte falaram sobre as mudanças que fizeram atualmente em suas regulamentações como resposta às recomendações de práticas de segurança da CSB.
What I would like to say is that based on the CSB investigation, we have made some changes within our local fire code, our state fire code. One of the two changes that were made was to take out some areas of the code that appear to be permissive. We've made that change so that all permits are now mandatory.
We had nowhere to start. We did not have any idea what kind of businesses we had, what kind of problems we had in the state. We got together with the Department of Labor, obtained a list of 7,500 potential dust-producing facilities. We sent a letter to every one of these facilities.
How many?
7,500.
75.
Well, let me clarify something here in a minute. This was the biggest mistake we've made. But we decided, I took it and gave it to my field supervisors and my field people. We've cut this list down to about 2,200 people. That's the people that's on the list right now that we need to inspect. And I think it all boils down to us trying to make them clean up. I think that's the ultimate goal, is just to walk in the plants and have them perfectly clean, and no hidden dust above ceilings and things like that is in some of them. But that's our main problem with it, and that's the type thing we need help with on convincing dust.
So the generation and the information provided by suppliers is really critical.
Yes.
I appreciate this panel. I think it was a very excellent testimony, and I think both Kentucky and North Carolina, the work that you've done following up on the incidents that the CSB's investigated has been very good. I appreciate that.
There may be numerous dust explosions occurring nationwide, but they may not always be brought to the attention of state fire marshals. This, in part, may be the result of a disconnect between state fire marshals' offices and the agencies charged with overseeing combustible dust fires and explosions from a worker safety perspective: the Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health.
As noted earlier by the CSB staff, many of the NFPA documents represent the basis for treatment of this subject within various model fire and building codes. NFPA addresses the hazardous chemical area in part based upon the physical nature of the material, that is, solid, liquid, or gas. In other instances, the treatment of a hazardous material may be derived in our codes and standards as a result of its actual use, such as in coal handling operations or chemical laboratories.
A simplistic way to picture the U.S. system is by thinking of a pyramid with national activities at the top and moving down through regional and state activities to local activities at the bottom of the pyramid. Most development is done at the top, adoption throughout the vertical structure of the pyramid, and implementation and enforcement typically at the building site, the local level, at the bottom.
Painel na parte da tarde de programa Voluntários para Impedir Explosões de Poeira apresentou especialistas em segurança industrial.
CEBA produces large quantities of organic powders which, when handled, can create combustible dust clouds. Consequently, the design and protection of the manufacturing equipment is essential in order to supply products to our customers in a safe, cost-effective, and timely manner.
Tom Hope, de produtos especiais da CIBA, foi acompanhado por Chuck Johnson, da Aluminium Association, David Oberholzer, da Valimit, Randy Davis, Industrial Explosion Group, Keith Finway e Harry Feeble, da FM Global Insurance Company, no painel.
Primarily, our purpose in the aluminum powder and pigment industry is for the engineering of our processes to be as safe as they can be, with a primary emphasis first on life safety and second on protection of property. And again, the important aspects of dealing with this hazard is a characterization of materials. You have to understand what you're working with. You have to evaluate your process with that in mind.
As we sit here today, there remain thousands of facilities that currently have potentially hazardous processes that have not been adequately protected because they are not aware of the hazard or because budget priorities have not permitted them to take appropriate actions.
FM Global operates on a philosophy that the majority of all property losses are preventable. Prevention requires a client whose management operate from a philosophy that is better to prevent a loss than to recover from one.
Além dos programas voluntários, houve um chamado de um orador para a adoção generalizada dos códigos da NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, Associação Nacional de Proteção contra Incêndios.
In closing, I would say that the Aluminum Association supports the CSB's current initiative. We do believe, and we have stated previously, that we believe that the NFPA standards should be incorporated at the state and local level for all states. And so when we try to communicate these issues to specific plant locations that are not involved in our association, it's pushing on a rope. We can't get that information out there to everyone, and fire marshals can reach places where we cannot.
Our first speaker has traveled from far away, from Norway, to be here.
O painel final lidou com barreiras técnicas da prevenção e proteção de explosões de pó e proteção. Ele apresentou o famoso especialista em explosões de pó, o professor Rolf Eckhoff, da Universidade de Bergen, na Noruega.
As I see it, we are now in the initial phase of a shift in philosophy of dust explosion mitigation. So far, we have been relying on more or less simple rules of thumb. In the years ahead, we shall be seeking more sophisticated methods that provide increased flexibility for tailoring, and hence more cost-effective designs.
O professor Eckhoff foi acompanhado num painel de barreiras técnicas por Eden Ural, da Loss Prevention Science and Technology Incorporated, John Going, da Fire Corporation, Walt Frank, da OBS Consulting, e James Mulligan, da Lockheed Martin.
In the U.S., the largest barrier to dust explosion research is the dwindling government and private funding. Most of the published data are coming not from the U.S., but from the rest of the developed world.
While it's important that we continue to develop and refine the technologies required to address combustible dust hazards, technical solutions are of value only when understood and successfully applied.
Modeling results that indicate the location, severity of an explosion could be used in optimizing the design of an industrial process if one is designing from the ground up. Changes in that design could be made that could reduce the effect of an explosion.
Por todo o dia, vários palestrantes discutiram o que eles denominam a inadequação de folhetos explicativos de materiais, ou MSDS, na transmissão dos verdadeiros riscos da poeira química.
For example, many MSDSs include numerous pages of toxicological data and environmental fate and transport data. In contrast, they often contain relatively little information about fire, explosion, and reactivity hazards.
We recognize that they're, in many instances, quite inadequate. Matter of fact, some of them in investigations that we've done have been a contributing cause for or root cause for some of these events because they've been so poor.
Tempo dedicado a comentários da plateia apresentou leque variado de opiniões sobre a prevenção de explosões de poeira.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding additional regulations. Please don't give us any more regulations. There's plenty out there. I think that if we take the time to maybe fine-tune the existing regulations a little bit, I do agree that perhaps the MSDSs need a little fine-tuning.
And I would argue that individuals who are unaware of the hazards of combustible dust must have been living on the dark side of the moon. And perhaps the easy way to deal with this problem is an educational campaign at first, and people can go look at what's been done.
CCPS recognized several years ago a gap in guidance related to handling dust and particulate solids, and decided to commission the writing of a new book entitled Safe Handling of Powders and Bulk Solids. Now, this book addresses issues such as tools for process design and plant engineers who are responsible for the designing and running of processes handling particulate solids in the chemical, pharmaceutical, and related manufacturing industries.
It was mentioned that the general duty clause can be used to address the hazard of combustible dust, but really that's a tough tool for a compliance officer to use. I'd like to see the board make some strong recommendations to OSHA to provide a national standard, a vertical standard, either included in the PSM standard, something along those lines, or perhaps along the lines of the grain standard.
Let's get the fuel out of there, and that's, whether you call that housekeeping or not, I'm not sure. I don't think actually housekeeping is quite the right word, because in an environment that releases processed dust to its surroundings, the surroundings become part of the process, and it's no longer housekeeping. You have to view the process in a wider scope, and I would urge considering that perspective.
And I heard from one of the panels earlier that even after a facility experienced an explosion, they did their risk analysis and decided it was worth the risk not to solve the problem. And then I hear about voluntary compliance. I'm sorry, that's from my personal perspective and my history, that may not be the best course of action to take. We're talking about what to put on an MSDS sheet. It crossed my mind we may want to create a mushroom cloud to set out beside some of those materials.
Primary explosion from dust is not the reason for the damage and the destruction and the death or injuries. It's the secondary explosion that causes most of the problems. So I want to leave you with the comment that the solution of the secondary explosion may be the better solution than trying to change MSDS or get additional data on MSDS or anything like that.
Na parte final da audiência, agradeceu aos panelistas por suas contribuições.
I hope you agree this has been a very insightful and stimulating day, and certainly a tremendous value to us at the CSB as we proceed with this study.
Os testemunhos dos panelistas e comentários do público farão parte do registro oficial do estudo sobre poeira da CSB. Para ver a edição completa desta audiência oficial sobre pó e para informações atualizadas sobre explosões de poeira e estudo de incêndios, visitem a www.csb.gov na internet.